question from Jose, and we can maybe make this a little bit more general. He asked, why is it so difficult for an old industrialist to understand the benefits of Lean, Agile, and the like? So I don't know, I picture Montgomery Burns from The Simpsons. Like, how would we explain Lean or similar practices to Mr. Burns? And I think it's a challenge. We can talk about benefits. I think the bigger challenge is getting leaders with decades of experience in any setting to realize that Lean is about them trying to change some of their management practices and behaviors, trying to change the culture, not just train others, not just preach that others need to change. That's a difficult barrier. Greg, I'm curious what your thoughts there.
It's in some ways a little bit ironic because I feel that manufacturing is so progressive when it comes to Lean that I would be just imagining like how would you even have that problem because most but most of this material was developed in automotive and manufacturing, especially if we're talking about the waste aspect of Lean, and so that was kind of my surprising take on it. But I think it really is the same answer for whether we're talking about an industrialist or whether we're talking about someone that's in construction or whether we're talking about healthcare. You really need to start with why, right? If you can align interests and say, we're talking about this because we want to create a higher quality product at a lower cost, and go from there, because there's no way you could disagree with that. So one of the things you learn in conflict resolution is start with what's everyone's interest, and if you can agree on what everyone's interest is, then you can start building off of that and then figure out where the disconnects are along the way, and then you can work through each one of those disconnects. So I think that if you start with the what, you're going to probably trip up. And the thing is a lot of times Lean folks are starting with the what because tools are really cool. I mean, they really help you get to the root cause. They really help you solve problems. And so you immediately want to pull your gadget out and say, oh, well, this is how we would do a fishbone, or this is what an A3 is, and just don't even go there. Start with the why, and then work your way through the how, and then work your way through the what. And I think you're going to find that you'll be able to change the hearts and minds of people much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a great point of starting with why. There's a related question here. Radenka asked, basically in a nutshell, how do I convince leaders that they have to change their approach to continuous improvement? That in their organization it's become bureaucratic. They want one person to solve it all. So maybe melding these questions together. Like if I was trying to work with Mr. Burns, I don't think you're going to go to Mr. Burns and say you need to change the way you behave. He would open up that trap door and you would fall down into a pit somewhere. But if you can engage around why, maybe Mr. Burns only cares about increasing the profitability of the Springfield nuclear plant. Well, that's a start. You'd hope he also would care about improving safety and reducing risk and all of that. But you can start with the why, and I think the how. I mean, you can try to expose leaders to other leaders in different organizations that behave differently, and maybe try to draw that connection between different approaches and different results. What do you think?
So just to clarify, could you repeat the question again, Mark?
Well, so the question, maybe let's just come back to that question where I was blurring them together. The question was about, in their organization, continuous improvement has gotten very bureaucratic. One person to do it all. How can we
I was in Simpsons land because you started talking about the Simpsons, and I was laughing to myself that it's like, what are all the Lean principles that you can learn from Simpsons? So I think that when we study, and it's really interesting, and Mark and I, we've been working together with KaiNexus for about 5 years now, and we've really tried to piece apart what really defines the success at organizations that have a successful culture of continuous improvement, and you really can't get around this. And so it really has to do with leadership, methodology, and technology. And so when we're talking about leadership, leadership is where the drive of all this happens, and leaders have to provide three things to this this engine almost, and that's they have to be the ones that are committed and they're talking about it constantly. That doesn't mean that they need to spend 98% of their time doing this, but it means that almost 100% of the times when they're talking to people, they should be bringing it up in some way, shape, or form. And then they need to hold people accountable to that. I mean, they need to say, one, this is important, and two, this is important for the mission of the company. It's important for every position of the job. But then finally, three, they're going to need to give resources to this, and resources could be time, it could be training, or it could be simply money. And it probably is going to be a combination of all those three. But at the end of the day, improvement is not something that can be delegated. And at the end of the day, improvement is something that's going to necessitate leadership participation.